Aloha, everybody. This is Joseph Liao. I am the admissions advisor for Hawaii Pacific University's Occupational Therapy Doctorate Program in Las Vegas. We're very excited. Me and Dr. Lingelbach are really excited to be able to start this this vlog series. We want to be able to assist you and be a strong resource in the different facets of applying and making sure you have a general understanding of the journey of going into occupational therapy school. So once again, my name is Joseph Leon. I'd like to introduce Dr. Lingelbach.
Aloha. Thanks, Joseph. As he mentioned, I'm Dr. Susan Lingelbach. I'm an occupational therapist. I'm also the director of admissions for HPU's Occupational Therapy Doctorate Program in Las Vegas. I'm also an assistant professor within the program. So you'll be seeing me once you get into the program teaching some of your classes as well. We are so excited to break down some of the barriers and the questions about applying for our program. And we're going to get started with one of the most common questions, which is prerequisites. So let's get started.
Thank you very much. So, like Dr. Lingelbach was saying, that's always the number one question that I get as an advisor every single day. And it's extremely important, the prerequisites that we chose, because it's absolutely going to be beneficial and help you get ready for the program. And the most important one that we find that does have some type of guidelines to make sure it's still refreshing in your memory. You have to take it within 5 years before applying to the program or take a refresher course is human anatomy and physiology. So like I was saying, it is required that you have to take it within 5 years prior to the program, unless you've got ongoing experience applying that in your work. That would be something you could fill out a course equivalency form. We can go into that a little later, but I wanted to give Dr. Lingelbach a little bit of time just to kind of explain the class and how it helps out with the program.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for mentioning that, Joseph. We do require 2 classes of anatomy and physiology. It equals 8 credits. So it doesn't have to be, anatomy and physiology 1 and then anatomy and physiology 2. It can be all human anatomy and a lab, or it could be all human physiology and a lab. Whatever combination you come up with, we can look at your transcripts and make sure that it's a good fit for what we're looking for. The reason why we ask you to have that fresh in your mind is right off the bat. In this hybrid accelerated program, you're going to be jumping into applied anatomy. So we have a lot of kinesiology concepts happening in that course, but we also have structure identification. We talk a lot about like the hand and the upper extremities, and really just how things move together. In occupational therapy, we work with people across the lifespan. They have a variety of abilities, and we have to know the human body and how it moves and supports somebody's ability to participate in occupation or not, so that we can understand some of their strengths, some of their limitations, and how we can work with them either to rehabilitate things that were lost or adapt the way that they do something so that they can still engage with the most amount of independence as possible, or that they want to have. So I think another key point here is if you have prior experience or ongoing experience and you've taken anatomy and physiology more than 5 years ago, some examples of that would be if you are an OTA, so an occupational therapy assistant, maybe you're a massage therapist, physical therapy assistant, maybe you're a rehab aide, something in the medical field where you were consistently using your knowledge of anatomy and physiology throughout your career, an EMT, for example. So there's lots of different ways that you can demonstrate that. If it has been greater than 5 years, still make an appointment to talk to Joseph so that we can work with you and determine what is the best course of action for you to get a refresher or something like that so that you can still apply for the program.
It was a great explanation, a lot better than the way I would have done it. So thank you very much. The next one, so we talked a little bit about the human anatomy and physiology. The next 2 courses are going to be the psychology courses. We have our developmental psychology course of lifespan. Then we have our abnormal psychology. And I do want to stress there are different ways to some universities may have the developmental part from infancy to adolescence or adult. If you take in them both, that could definitely help. You would still definitely need to require a course equivalency form, but that would definitely help because we know universities have different courses. But I'll go ahead and let Dr. Lingelbach explain a little bit more about it.
Sure. Yeah, I like that you said, there could be a scenario where you have a developmental psychology course that only covered a portion of the lifespan, and maybe your university offers a course that covers that second half of the lifespan. You would actually need both. So sometimes when people fill out a course equivalency form, they think, oh, they're just going to swap courses like a one-to-one swap. And what's interesting about our process is we may look at your transcript and say, okay, we're going to take these two courses and that will equal the equivalent of this one course. We don't really care if you took one course that was like perfectly wrapped up in a bow to satisfy this requirement. We just want you to have the background knowledge. So that's one of the things that we really stress in our program is we don't need to have these perfect boxes checked off. We just need to know that you have that knowledge foundation coming into the program, which is going to help you in your courses so that you understand, what's going on, because that knowledge is going to build right from the first term of the program. So with developmental psychology, again, it could also be called something else. So maybe your university doesn't call it psychology, and it's in the kinesiology department, and it's development across the lifespan. Maybe it's in a child development department. So again, it doesn't have to look or be called exactly the same thing that's on our prerequisite list. We just need to check and make sure that it's that foundational knowledge that we need. And then abnormal psychology, we do get questions about this one every once in a while. Abnormal psychology is still very important in occupational therapy because we do work with people in the mental health field. So we need to have a good, strong base of what are some of the, maybe more significant mental illnesses out there that we might encounter within that area of practice.
Excellent. And I do want to also add one little tidbit. I do tend to get questions regarding using a different course as a different alternative, such as general psychology. Um, it would not be accepted, but at the same time, I do want to stress just find a moment. We can set up an appointment with me. We can talk about it. That way I can review your transcript. And if, in case you are busy, I'd be more than happy to fill out that course equivalency form. But if you feel that the course that you've taken is relevant to what we require, feel free to send it on over to me. So the next course I would like to bring up, and this one is kind of popular as well because there's multiple courses that can be relevant to it. I know I have seen some type of exercise science course with it. It's not just typical math, but statistics. That's going to be one of our requirements as well. That is another course that could vary as well. We would have to, of course, fill out a course equivalency form if you feel like it is necessary. You'd like for us to take a look at, but like for Dr. Lingelbach to go ahead and explain a little bit about it.
Sure. So why statistics? It's a great question. Unfortunately, or fortunately, if you love research like some of us do, it is required. So even though you may not be conducting research as part of the doctorate program, or maybe you do choose to do a research project, especially for your capstone, which is the culminating experience of the doctorate program, you still need to be able to read and understand research. So we, as ethical occupational therapy practitioners, have to practice evidence-based practice, which means we are going to the research and we are seeing what is effective, what's maybe not effective, or maybe what's not proven with a strong level of evidence yet. so that we know, do we incorporate this into our practice settings? Does it work with a certain population? So we really have to understand what the research is saying so that we can make ethical decisions when we're going out and working with our clients. In order to understand the research, you have to understand statistics. You don't have to be a statistician. You're not getting a doctorate in statistics, but you do have to understand some basics. We do have a couple of scholarly practice courses throughout the program. So we do kind of brush up on those statistic skills as well, but really apply them within those courses.
Awesome. So the next course that I do want to talk about a little bit, this one, I would not necessarily say tricky, but you would have to have one of these three different courses. And the first one would be general physics. The next one's kinesiology and biomechanics. So, like I said, between those three, as long as you've taken one of them, that would be a requirement. You would need 3 semester hours with that. So I'd like Dr. Lingelbach just to kind of explain and go into detail about one of those 3 courses, or how she may like whichever one you may take.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one, like Joseph said, is a choice. It could be anything along those lines. The reason why we're asking for this type of course is because we do want to know how the body works. So kinesiology is the study of movement. Same thing with things like physics or biomechanics. It's really, how do systems work together? How do things move together? And those things are really important to be able to understand, just basically how things fit together, along with that human anatomy and physiology knowledge, so that you can hit the ground running when you start the program.
Excellent. And the last one, it's 90% of all the students, we've all pretty much have taken it, would be English composition or writing. That's as basic as it sounds. It's just going to be your standard freshman course. Sometimes it may be, like I've said earlier in the video, it could be named a little different. Just have me review it, check over it. But that would be our last prerequisite course necessary. And we do have 2 more. They're not required, but recommended. And I would love for Dr. Lingelbach to just explain a little bit about it. But those would be biology with lab and medical terminology, because especially the medical terminology, that would be extremely beneficial in the program, getting to know those certain terms that you have to apply in your everyday use.
Right. Yeah. So, what I want to emphasize, first of all, and I really appreciate that you said that these are our recommended prerequisites. These are things that we think may benefit you before you enter the program, but they may not be a course that everyone is going to take. Just because we have a recommended course does not mean you have to take it in order to get in. So I don't want people to feel like, oh, well, I have to overstretch myself and try to find these courses because it's going to make my application look so much stronger than another candidate. That's not necessarily true. It may just be for your benefit. So it's one of those things that, if you've taken it, great. You're going to have, maybe a small leg up within the program when you first start, because we do have a lot of medical terminology that gets thrown around. Everybody is going to be coming in, fresh and not necessarily knowing all the language of occupational therapy. But we do work with a lot of physicians and other healthcare providers that use a lot of medical terminology. And so when we're doing chart reviews, when we're going out and working in a hospital setting, it's really beneficial to know what some of those terms mean. And when you're studying things like diseases and the disease process and how that might affect somebody's ability to participate in their daily occupations, medical terminology gives you those kind of like roots of words, so that you, even if you don't know exactly what it means, you can say, oh, itis. I remember, if it ends in itis, I know what that means. And so it allows you to kind of learn the language of the medical profession if you're not already familiar with it. And then biology, of course, this is both a science-based and very creative profession. So having foundational knowledge in that is helpful as well. But if you can't get those in, not a problem. They're just recommended, not required.
I do want to ask you, amongst those prerequisites, which one was your favorite course you took in college?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. I was so fascinated by abnormal psychology. It was something that I didn't really anticipate being as interested in as I was. I found it to be enlightening as well, and just how to be supportive and understanding, and really start to understand the stigma around mental health, which I really was not aware of before. So by taking that course, it was like, oh my gosh, there's so much to understand about mental health that people like the general public maybe don't understand. Thankfully, in the last 15 years or so since I took that course, there has been so much more of a national push to talk about breaking the stigma around mental health. So I do think it's a little bit more out there than it was when I was going through my prerequisites. But yeah, I loved it. And then I loved all of the mental health coursework in my OT program as well.
I'd imagine it was a lot easier to get a better understanding with the knowledge taking that course, going to the program, and then being able to use it outside of the program while you're practicing and working.
100%. I mean, we don't put prerequisites in place because we're trying to filter through people, or determine which candidates might be better than others. We truly do want you to have that foundational knowledge because you use it. If we don't think you're going to use it, we're not going to make it a prerequisite for the program.
Absolutely. So I do want to reiterate to everybody, now that we've come to kind of a conclusion of our discussion about prerequisites, why it's necessary, how it's going to be beneficial for you, I'd like to reiterate we'll have my information on there so you can reach out to me, whether it's an email, phone call, text. I'm more than happy to assist you. Feel free to set up an appointment with me, whether it's a phone call, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, whichever is easier for you. I'd love to have these discussions to be able to set you on the right path and get you to the journey of becoming a occupational therapist, a doctor. So with that being said, we want to thank you all very much for the time you spent watching us. We will be having more videos in the future. And please follow us on our social media page. We will be having more updates regarding the program and more exciting information to come. And thank you, Dr.
Mahalo.
Langelbach. Yep, mahalo.
Aloha, everyone.